Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Stampin' on Friday episode. Today's stamp set we're going to be using Lawn Fawn, So Lovely. So this is the stamp set right here. I'm going to use this dress form and the You're So Lovely. And I'm going to start off with my card base. It's a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 inch piece of cardstock as my base, rather. And I'm just using some paper tray ink craft cardstock. And then I have 2 pieces of pattern paper which come from this paper pad. It's the new My Mind's Eye, The Sweetest Thing. This is called Bluebell. And love, love, love the papers. I love the colors, of course, because there's my favorite colors in there. That blue, that teal turquoise kind of blue. So let's go ahead and get started. I have a piece of pattern paper. This one's got a little like grid on it, and it measures 3 3/4 by 3 3/4. And then I have this one right here, which measures 3 1/2 by 3 1/2. But what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to kind of offset them a little bit on the front of my card base. So I'm just going to take some adhesive, and I'm going to use my ATG gun, and I'm just going to put a little bit of adhesive right in the middle because I am going to go ahead and sew this piece together. So I'm just going to kind of put this up in the corner, and then I'm going to take my other piece and kind of lay it out just like so. And then I'm going to take it to my sewing machine, and you're going to use some sewing thread that matches this and just go right around the perimeter of this grid one. So I will be right back. I have my stitching all done around my pattern paper. Now I did leave my thread hanging here because I wanted to show you how I deal with the ends. I don't like to back stitch. I just like to pull my thread through. So what I do is I take my back stitches, and when you pull on them, the stitches from the front start to pull through, and you could just grab them and pull them out. So do the same thing with this one. So now I have all my thread to the back of my card, and then what I do is I just take some washi tape and stick it down and then trim off the extra pieces. Whoops. Just like that. So that's my front of my card, and that'll go, like I said, right here. The next thing I'm going to do is, before I start doing my stamping, I have some seam binding, and this is the Hug Snug, which I get from a company called So True, and I'll have a link to them over on my blog if you want to check it out. But I order my seam binding from them. This is the, it's not the white, it's the ivory or off-white or natural maybe. I'm not sure what they call it. But I am going to just take this little box right here, put my seam binding in, and I'm going to use some Mr. Huey's, this is called Bonnie Blue, and I'm going to spray my seam binding, make sure it's nice and coated, and then what I do is I wrinkle it up, and you've seen me do videos on this before. I think I have a whole video just on seam binding. There's still a little bit of white in there, so we're just going to spray it a little bit more, and then you can either let this sit to dry, or you can heat it with your heat gun. So for right now, I'm just going to wrinkle it up a little bit more, and now my hands are all blue, and set that aside to dry by itself. Okay, while my seam binding is drying, I'm going to go ahead and stamp my first part of this, and I'm going to do the dress form. So I'm just going to mount that onto my block, and I'm going to use Memento Tuxedo Black ink. Make sure that's inked up nice and well. And then I'm going to stamp this down here towards the bottom of my pattern paper. Just like that. I'll set that aside, and then I'm going to take a piece of the scrap paper, which is the same pattern paper that I used on the back side of this, and I'm going to stamp that middle part of the dress form out. And then use my scissors to trim it. Okay, so I have my dress form all cut out. What I'm going to do now is just use some Scotch Quick Dried glue, and I'm going to adhere this right to my dress form that I stamped earlier. So it's just a little bit of paper piecing, just like that. Put the lid back on my quick dry. And I'm going to switch out my stamp now for the sentiment, which is "You're so lovely." I'm going to use my VersaFine ink. And I'm using the VersaFine because I like how dark it is. It really is a nice, crisp black. Alright, and then I did pull out some little brads that I think I'm going to put underneath here, underneath the "So Lovely, You're So Lovely." So I have my Stampin' Up! Grid mat here, and my little, just so I can make sure I'm getting this straight. I think I'm going to do one right here, and then I'm going to go over 3 holes and do another one. So I'll have to make these holes a little bit bigger. And now the brads come from the decorative brads that go with that same set. So I'll put one here, one on the back. Right, now this will go on my card base, but before I put that on, I'm going to use my seam binding, which is pretty much dry now. I did heat it up a little bit with my heat gun before, so before I adhere this down, I'm going to go ahead and tie my seam binding on. Actually, I think what I'm going to do, just to make it a little bit easier, is I'm going to take my ATG, run a strip of the adhesive along the back, just so it has something to hold on to. And then I'll adhere this down to my card base. So before I tie my seam binding, I'm just going to adhere this down to my card base, just like that. And then I will tie a little bow. Alright, so I just tied a little knot, trimmed off my ends of my seam binding, and that's my card for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.